Dr. Daniel Froemel is an education consultant, a former educator, and a Berkeley County resident who's concerned about the future of the Berkeley County School District. That's why he's running for the Berkeley County School Board to represent the District 5 area. I talked one-on-one with Dr. Daniel for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Dr. Daniel Froemel, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you currently work as a consultant to the United States Department of Education. In fact, you have many years of experience in education. Now you want to become the next candidate, well, actually the next council member for District 5 for Berkeley County School Board. So tell me, Dr. Daniel, why the Berkeley County School Board? Why you?
Great. Thank you for the question. So, we are fairly new to the area. I'll be honest with you. We moved here about 3 years ago, and I didn't really have any political aspirations. I have a job that I love. I've been working with at-risk youth for about 20 years and made it up to the national level. Just really love the work that I do. I've got 2 children in Berkeley County schools. I've got a 5th grader at Nexton Elementary. I've got a 7th grader at Cane Bay Middle School. And about 2 years ago, I started paying attention to what was going on in our school board. I'm ashamed to say that as an educator, I didn't always really pay attention to school board politics, probably like I should have. But when I saw what was going on in Berkeley County, it really got my attention, because what's going on here is not normal. It's not good for students, and it's not good for teachers. And I'll tell you specifically what I mean.
Yes.
In 2022, we saw when this new board took over, within the first 30 minutes of their board meeting, they fired Deion Jackson. He was the first black superintendent of Berkeley County Schools, and by all accounts, just an incredible administrator. And they did this with really without any cause, without any reason, without any notice to the public. And then they appointed another superintendent without any public input. I mean, these are my kids in the school. Usually you go through a process to hire a superintendent. And so I kept paying attention to what they were doing there. And then we saw that they allowed a parent, actually my opponent, to challenge 93 books in a single day to be banned from the school system. Just really an anti-education type movement there, and allowing one parent to make decisions for others. And then we saw this summer, we saw a board close down J.K. Gordine Elementary, which is a rural school, about 98% black students there. And this school, I get that it's a small school, and there had been discussions about closing it. But come on, a first-year teacher could tell you that if you're going to close down a school, let's do it with some sensitivity. They didn't tell the parents. They didn't put it on the board agenda. They didn't tell the administrators, the students. Can you imagine being a second grader in elementary school, and you finish up your school year, and then you're ready to go back to school, and all of a sudden you get an email telling you that you're going to a brand new school? That's not how we should be treating children. And if that's how current board members think that things should be done, then they need to think of a different occupation. We need to have greater sensitivity towards children. We need to have greater communication. A lot of these things are being done in secrecy. And so to get back to the question there, that was part of the reason why I got into this, is that seeing these moves, they're politically based. They're not in the best interest of children. And I'm not going to let anybody mess with my kids' education. And as an educator, I'm not going to let other people mess around with school systems. And so what I believe I can do in this role, I know there's a very long answer, so I apologize. But, one of the reasons we moved here is we love Berkeley County. And you look at how many people are moving in here. This place is incredible. The people that are moving here, the community, we have the chance to become the #1 school system in this state. But we need to stop focusing on politics, and we need to start focusing on our kids and on our teachers.
Well, let me go back to J.K. Gordine, because obviously I interviewed a couple of school board members about that earlier this summer. But what exactly should have been the sensitivity when it came to J.K. Gordine and actually merging with the other school?
Yeah, great question. And so again, I understand from a fiscal standpoint that when a school population dwindles, that those kind of difficult decisions sometimes have to be made. But the way that you should properly do something like that is put it on the board agenda. Instead of putting it on the agenda, they introduced it as an amendment to the budget. It was a complete surprise to everybody. Nobody from the community could even be there to discuss it. So number one, you got to be transparent and tell people what you're thinking of doing. Number two, when you're going to close a school, the proper way to do that would be to give at least 6 months, if not a year, of notice, so that folks can properly make that transition in their minds and then physically. When we do things just so haphazardly and so quickly like that, it's a slap in the face to the community, to the students, and to the teachers there. So just the simple things of just giving proper notice, just giving time for an adequate transition. We already had a balanced budget at that point, so there's no need to act so quickly and so rashly.
Well, Dr. Daniel, let me ask you this as a follow up. Well, let me ask you this. What should have been the ideal timeline when it came to J.K. Cordine and his merger?
Good question. I would have said a year. I think is a good time frame for that. At a minimum, though, because sometimes we do need to move quicker than that. I would have said at least 6 months, and I don't see any reason why. Even with that decision being made in the ugly way that it was, at the next board meeting, you heard parents get up. That whole room was packed. I mean, they couldn't even fit all the parents in the boardroom, and they were asking for more time. They were asking for just basic respect. At a minimum, we could have given them 6 months to properly make that transition.
And now that that transition has been made, Dr. Daniel, what should happen next with the school, the teachers, and the students?
Yeah, first, I think that they're owed an apology. I think that, again, the way that this was handled, that's just not how you treat your own students in your own district. And number two is really, now that they are at the new school, working with the families, working with the students, keeping a close eye on it, making sure that the funding that was saved from J.K. Gordine, that is going directly to those students, and that is supporting those students as they work through this transition, because they're going to need some additional support. Anytime a student transitions school, we know that there's a risk of learning loss. We see this with students in foster care. We see this in students that are served through our homeless education programs, that every time a student transitions school, there's an incredible risk for loss of learning. And so we need to make sure that we are filling those gaps and accelerating learning where we can.
So, where do you fill those gaps when it comes to J.K. Cordine and making certain that those kids don't have that learning loss?
Yeah, I think they need to look at, what additional services those students might need. Are they going to need additional tutoring services and things like that? Interventions, just to make sure that transition is going smoothly for them. And then, of course, throughout the whole process, you got to ensure that you're communicating effectively with parents.
Now, how much funding was actually allocated towards J.K. Cordine with this particular merger that just happened?
In what they said they were going to save from closing J.K. Gordon.
Yes, sir.
I'd have to go back and look at my notes. I think it was about 1.5 million.
Wow.
Is the figure that they had quoted from it. And so again, I get it. I understand the logic behind it. It's just the manner in which it's done. That's not how we treat students. That's not how we should treat our parents and our staff.
Now that merger has happened, Dr. Daniel, how many students are combined in those two schools?
Oh, I'd have to look at the statistics. I'm actually in District 5 there,
Right.
District 7.
Right.
So I don't have the numbers at the ready for that.
Now, you talked earlier about that pace of growth. Well, with obviously that merger, and I know it's not your district, your district's District 5, and that's District 7. How many more kids do you anticipate going to J.K. Cordine after this merger?
Going to St. Stephen's with,
Yes,
with the
sir.
merger?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
So I think there were about 100 students at J.K. Gordine, if I'm remembering correctly, that were then now will be attending St. Stephen's.
How much? I know you're not there just yet. If you're elected, I'm sure. But let me ask you this: if you were to be elected, how do you track that funding to make sure? Sorry, there's a car crash there. But making sure that unfortunately, but to make sure that that funding stays within J.K. Cordine and St. Stephen's for those kids specifically.
Yeah, I think, again, part of being the board is having that open and transparent conversations, having those discussions in open session at the board meeting, and getting those reports from the fiscal office so that the community can be aware of what's going on, and have that assurance that these students were taken care of during this transition time.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Daniel. If you were to be elected to the school board, what would you ask for a forensic audit on day one?
That's a good question. To be honest, I hadn't really thought about it, but I agree. There needs to be that accountability there to make sure that these students are properly being served.
How else should this school board be held accountable right now? Obviously, the decisions, the superintendent, J.K. Cordine, St. Stephen merger.
Well, that's why we have elections. right? You have a school board that the current majority, 6 members, they signed a pledge for Moms for Liberty, and then they showed us what they're about. That, like I said, those actions: firing a superintendent, closing a school, banning books. These are not normal behaviors of a school board, and none of these decisions are going to improve academic outcomes for students. And so the best way to hold them accountable is through our vote. This is the time to make our voice heard. Early voting starts today, and
Right.
we're going until November 5th, and so this is the time for people to make their voice heard and to hold folks accountable.
So with the obviously changes in superintendents, and obviously the change with books, and of course the St. Stephen's JK Codine merger, what exactly are the academic outcomes when it comes holistically to the school district?
Yeah, I think our academic outcomes could be further along than where they are, for sure. And one of the big things that I see, and I kind of can use this answer for pretty much anything. One of the biggest issues that we're facing right now is the national teacher shortage. Okay, so when I started teaching 20 years ago, and you applied for a job, the district had the choice between you and 2 or 3 other candidates. Now, when school districts are going to fill positions, the candidate has the choice between them and Charleston County or Dorchester County. They've got multiple options. And so if we want to have the best test scores, if we want to have the greatest academic growth in our students, then we need to take care of our teachers. We need to be able to retain and recruit the best teachers. You can't do that when you have a school board member where, like my opponent was a vice chair of Moms for Liberty. This is a very anti-government group, according to the ACLU, and they've had a lot of bad publicity, not very teacher-friendly. Folks aren't going to want to work for Moms for Liberty school board members. They're going to go to Charleston County, they're going to go to Dorchester County, and we're going to lose out. I've heard from a lot of teachers throughout this process how frustrated they are with the lack of leadership at the board level, the lack of having their voice heard, that are thinking of leaving the field. And we see this especially like in the area of special education, where we're already under-resourced. So if we want to improve these academic outcomes and really become a leader in the state, number one thing we need to do is recruit and retain the best teachers. And we need to take that seriously. And the way you do that is you have school board members that know what it's like to be in a school. I've got 20 years of experience working in education at all levels. My opponent has never worked in a school system. That should be concerning to anybody that's voting, because whether or not you agree with me on some of the hot button issues or the fringe issues, at the end of the day, the number one indicator of how much growth your student, your child is going to make is the quality of the teacher that they have in front of them. And I guarantee you that we can do a better job of recruiting and retaining teachers than our opponents.
And I hope to get your opponent on Quintin's close-ups to get his side of the story on this particular issue. But let me ask you this. When it comes to special education, what actually are we lacking when it comes to that in Berkeley County?
Yeah, I've talked with a lot of special education teachers throughout this. Number one, we always tend to have a shortage in special education teachers. They are extremely hard to find teachers with that proper certification, and so we're in a constant battle. The school system has done some things right. They offered a $10,000 signing bonus for special education teachers, and I point that out to show what a dire position we're in trying to hire those teachers. We need to be working with the state to look at certifications that we can offer for our current teachers, and then how can we also fund that so that teachers can get that paid for by the district and agree to stay with the district for a certain period of time. The other thing we need to look at is our support with paraprofessionals and teachers' assistants. So in special education classrooms, you oftentimes have one special education teacher, and then they're supported by 2 or 3 or 4 teacher assistants, folks that don't have a teaching degree but do have training in the field and are able to support in the classroom. And what I've heard from special education teachers is that they don't have enough. I talked with one teacher who had multiple students with toileting and feeding needs throughout the day, and only had 2 assistants, right? So in this classroom, those 2 assistants are pretty much doing those basic, needs for those students. The other students still need that individualized one-on-one support with learning as well. The teacher can't be everywhere at once, especially with a classroom like that. And so they're going to need additional support in the classroom. The other piece that we need is just a better feedback loop between our board, our administration, and our teachers, and specifically our special education teachers in this case, so that we can have these ongoing conversations to identify what's going on in the classroom and how we can solve it. Because this is what I love about education. So many times you'll have a group of administrators sitting around the room scratching their head on how to do something. You call in the teachers, you sit down with them, you can usually get that problem solved pretty quickly. They know what the problem is and they know what they need to solve it. And it's our job as a board to ensure that they have the resources to do that.
So when it comes to these special, obviously these teacher assistants that we all know here in the Low Country, how many teacher assistants do they actually need for the disabilities or for disability students in Berkeley County?
Yeah, and that's really going to vary from classroom to classroom, and honestly, from year to year, depending on the students that we have. With special education, that is what makes it so challenging. Is that it's looking at each student's individualized needs, and so that can change over time, and that can change with the population of students that you have at any given time.
So where's that population now versus 4 years ago when it comes to Berkeley County schools?
The special education population?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the statistics on where they were 4 years ago based now. I mean, you tend to see, pretty steady averages in special education, the percentage of students that are typically classified over time. It's, again, I think where we're hurting is having the teachers to support the students with special education needs, where we used to have better staffing models, but due to COVID and a host of other reasons, we've just seen a lot of teachers leaving the field. And we want to make sure not only that we have teachers there, but that we have high quality teachers working with our students as well.
When it comes to the retention rate in Berkeley County, how many teachers have actually gone away from Berkeley County and gone to a different district?
Yeah, we have a shortage here where I think the last statistic I heard is that we have about 1,000 students moving into the district every single year, or at least this past year. So this incredible growth means that we not only need to retain the current teachers that we have, but we're going to need to recruit additional teachers. Some thoughts on how we can do this. Number one is we need to become a teacher-friendly district. We need to be a place that teachers want to work in, that they know that if they come here, they're going to be supported by the board, they're going to be supported by their administration. A lot of teachers reach out to me and tell me that they're in support of my campaign, but they're afraid to speak out. There's a weird culture of fear there that makes me concerned, especially to see that in a educational environment. Other things that we can do to support teachers: we need to be competitive with pay. We came in about $5,000 under what Charleston County's starting pay is. That's not good when we're looking at new teachers. What they're going to do is they're going to go work in Charleston County, but they're going to live in Berkeley County. Those teachers should be teaching here. We've got to be competitive with that pay. Other things we can do: teachers are entitled to 30 minutes of unencumbered time a day. What this means is that this is a state law that was passed. They should have 30 minutes of a break in the day there. The way that a lot of schools are addressing that is that they're having students sit in the hallway for the first 30 minutes of the day, and they're counting that as the teacher's break. I think if we get more creative, hire more related arts teachers, we can give teachers that 30 minutes. And really, it should be more. I mean, it's 30 minutes plus they need to have adequate planning time. If we want teachers to teach engaging, strong, good lessons that improve academic outcomes, we got to give them that time to do the work. We're not always doing that, and that's not really fair to teachers. And in fact, when I've heard some teachers say that they don't even get a break throughout the whole entire day. Again, we need to raise our standards. That's not how education should work, and we need to be taking care of our teachers because they're the ones that are going to make the biggest difference. Final thing I'll say on it is we need to have, or final two things I'll say on it is we need to have fair and transparent teacher contracts. Our teacher contracts right now are incredibly vague and very one-sided, and they can be punitive to teachers that are trying to advance in their careers, or they can change a teacher assignment and they're still held under that contract. And then the last thing I would say is we need to get politics out of the classroom. We've seen this at a national level where folks are really trying to politicize education, and we're now seeing that in Berkeley County. We're seeing the GOP openly endorse candidates for school board. The school board race is nonpartisan, and that's for a very good reason. Our schools are for everybody. They're not just for Republicans. They're not just for Democrats. They are for every single student. And when you start introducing political ideology into a school board, it's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for exclusion. That is the antithesis of what public education is supposed to be. And I, I can't tell you how disheartened I am to see that creeping into our local schools here.
And I wish I had more time to talk to you about politics, but if you are elected to the office, I'll get you back on Quintin's Close Up
Yeah.
to talk more in depth about that. But how many advanced teachers are there in the Berkeley County School District system?
Say that one more time.
How many advanced teachers are there in the Berkeley County School District system?
Teaching advanced classes like AP classes. Is
Oh
that
yeah, oh yes.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'd have to check the statistics on how many teachers we have with those certifications. I don't have that information.
Oh, no worries. Let me go obviously to what you just mentioned. Most of these teachers are probably leaving Berkeley County to go to Charleston, Dorchester County, or working in Charleston County, but live in Berkeley County. Where is the strategic plan for workforce housing for teachers in Berkeley County?
Yeah, I have heard that there has been some talk around starting to develop housing for that, and that is something that I would be supportive of. I think that it's probably needed with the amount of growth that we're seeing in this area. Again, it's kind of a shame though. Teaching is a professional job that folks went to school for 4 or 5 years for. It seems like they shouldn't. It's a shame that our pay is at a level that then we have to have some sort of almost subsidized housing for that, where this is a professional job and it should pay a professional wage so people can live in the community in which they work.
Whatever incentives would you actually have for these teachers who want to come and apply for Berkeley County to be teachers?
Yeah. Like I said, I think it comes back to that idea of one being competitive with our pay. So we got to be around the mark of where Charleston is, where our neighbors are. Be one of the more competitive ones in the state if we want to attract the best. We can build a culture here that will attract teachers, and then also, hiring bonuses and a differentiated pay for some of those hard to fill positions. I always think that's a really good strategy when you're looking at some of your more hard to fill schools or hard to fill positions like special education, so that we can staff those positions. And then there's other things we can do. Like when you talk to teachers, a lot of times what they say is, things that are stressing them out is that they don't have enough planning time and discipline. And so things that we can do around that is that we can look at our yearly calendar and make sure that we have heavy teacher input when we're developing that, so that we have appropriate breaks throughout the year that give the teachers that chance to catch their breath and provide those planning days throughout the year so that they can get the work done that they need to get done. They can get the professional development done that they need to get done. And then again, going back to this idea of being a teacher-friendly place, is that you have administration that also supports their teachers with the challenges that they're having in the classroom.
What other challenges are teachers having in the classroom in Berkeley County?
Yeah, so the main two that I've heard a lot about is the discipline in the classroom, and then again, just not having enough time in the day to get all the work done that they need to get done. So you'll have a teacher that might have a planning period throughout the day, but then that planning period is always filled up with either meetings like IEP meetings, going to meetings for special education students,
Sure.
or they're having to do additional training during that time. I know they're working on a new literacy curriculum right now, and so they don't actually even get to have the planning time that's entitled to them throughout the day. And so that's where I think we really need to work with teachers and work with building administrators to make sure that planning time, that unencumbered time, is protected and valued in our school system.
Now, how much has student attendance increased by in 4 years in District 5?
I'd have to look at the attendance rates for that to give you a specific answer on that.
Have student discipline referrals, Dr. Daniel, actually increased in the past 4 years in District 5?
I'd have to check on it to give you a specific answer on that.
How many students have actually, in your particular mind, in District 5, perform below grade level?
So I don't have for District 5. I remember looking at the SC Ready scores for it, and we did have a lot of students that were not on grade level for District 5, or I'm sorry, for Berkeley County. I'd have to look and see if they even break them up by the specific districts for that.
Well,
and so again,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So I think again the way that you improve those scores though is that is through hiring and retaining, quality educators. Again, that's going to be the thing that makes the biggest difference for that student in that classroom.
And going back to what you said, when you look at those statistics for the overall district, how many of those students are we talking right there?
Say that one more time.
Oh yeah, for those kids who are performing below grade level.
Uh, I'd have to pull up the SC Ready source
Okay.
to give you that answer. Sorry, I should have pulled them up here. So
Oh,
so
no
I can tell you
worries.
that.
No worries. But let me ask you this: how many teachers and principals have Berkeley County Schools actually retained over the past 4 years?
How many teachers have they retained over the past 4 years?
And principals.
Yeah, I'm not. I'd have to. I'm not even sure where to find that information, if that information is made public by them or not.
Okay.
I know at the beginning of this year, the report that I saw was that they were 100 positions short going into this school year.
And with that growth, how many more positions do Berkeley County Schools need to catch up with that growth and meet the needs of the community?
Yeah, these are all good questions, and those are things that really I'd have to be on the board. I'm running for election.
Yes, sir.
When I'm on the board, I'll have better access to that information. But as a private citizen right
Yes, sir.
now, I don't have that at my fingertips like I would when elected.
Oh, no worries. I know you mentioned earlier, obviously, about obviously the SC Ready scores. But what percentage of students at, say, for instance, Berkeley High scored a C or higher on the algebra, biology, or English Gateway course assessments for end of course for 2022-2023 semester?
Yeah, I would have to pull up the scores to give you exact percentages on that. My brain isn't that good to memorize all the stats from the state testing.
Were there any growths in areas that are very popular, reading and writing?
Yeah, I believe that they did see some growth in their ELA scores.
Mm. So when it comes to reading and math, what's the reading and math proficiency at Cane Bay Elementary?
Again, I'd have to pull up the scores to I don't have them memorized.
Oh, no worries. Well, I know earlier, Dr. Dan, you talked a lot about teachers and what they need right now. So, what are the average years of experience for a teacher, say, at Cane Bay Middle?
I'd have to pull up the stats on those.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Well, let me go back, obviously, to teachers again and the retention rate. What exactly is that retention rate in District 5?
I think you had asked that. I don't know that where like if that they break that down by districts.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
Oh, no, I completely understand that. Yes, sir. And when it comes to obviously those achievement gaps, that's another big issue, obviously, in schools these days. Where exactly is the achievement gap between minority students and non-minority students?
Again, I can go and look all these pieces up for you, but I don't have the test scores memorized
Okay.
for this. So I'd be happy to look at those, and we can circle back around and
Sure.
have a more in depth conversation about the specific test scores for individual students.
Oh, no worries. Well, let me ask you this, Dan. How much does the Berkeley County School District actually spend on standardized tests such as SE Ready and others?
Oh, I don't have access to that budget information. Again, these are kind of questions that if I'm on the board,
Sure.
I think that like I'd have that information at my ready. But at this position, again, I'm running for school board at this point. If that makes sense.
Oh, no worries. I know obviously you talked about the issues on the Berkeley County School Board right now, but in your mind, Dr. Daniel, what should be the three key roles of the Berkeley County School Board?
Yeah. So the three key roles that you typically see with a school board is that one, they really only have one employee, right? They're hiring and firing the superintendent for the district, and so that's obviously a key function of the school board. Number two is that they're looking at the budget, so they're balancing the budget each year and deciding where the funds should be allocated to. And then number three, setting policy for the district. And so reviewing policy, taking the state mandates and laws that come down, and then developing that into policies for the school district.
So if you were on a board right now, Dr. Daniel, what policies would you actually review?
What policies would I review? Yeah, so some of the ones that have caught my attention recently. Obviously, we just had one around book banning. That was a policy in the review process for that. I think that ultimately they started out with a pretty narrow revision of that. It became a little bit wider. Again, I'd want to look at just making sure that we're giving deference to teachers, and that we're respecting the right of teachers to teach and students to learn, to ensure that we're not avoiding any unnecessary censorship with that. And then number two, another policy that caught my attention lately is, this is kind of a small one, but during board meetings they changed it so that during citizen comment, school board members are not allowed to comment after a citizen comment. So to answer a question or ask any sort of clarifying question, I think that kind of takes away the point of a citizen comment. So I'd want to see us do something where we can where we can have more engagement with the community and with our stakeholders there.
Dr. Daniel Froemel, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.